Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We have on the line Daniel Sauble and Shade Solon from our Nexus Repository Manager team, or really not the Nexus Repository Manager team, the user experience team that works with all of our products, including Nexus Repository. They are going to talk about how they've been working with the community to make the product more helpful from a user experience standpoint. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Daniel and let him and Shade run this session. Thanks.
Thanks, Derek. So my name is Daniel Sauble. I'm a product owner here at Sonatype, and with me is Shade Solon, a UX researcher here, also at Sonatype. And today we're going to talk a little bit about how the team is making Nexus Repository Manager more helpful. Both of us are based out of the Pacific Northwest. I live in Portland, Oregon, and Shade is a little bit to the north in Seattle, Washington. So to kind of kick this off, I wanted to talk a little bit about in Sonatype's product line, and that ends up being the welcome page in Nexus Repository Manager. At the moment, it gets about 400,000 active monthly users, which is a lot, and about 25,000 clicks on the content in that page per month. And so it's really an ideal place to kind of focus first on improving the experience and making it more helpful. So for those of you who have been using Nexus Repo for a while, this page might look familiar to you. This is how the welcome page looked as of January 2017. And about around that time, I took ownership of this page and was kind of looking at kind of how we can improve it. So if you look at the page, you can see that there's a kind of a small section for Nexus Repo resources midway down the page. But overall, I felt that we were underutilizing the space that was available, and that we could do better. So over the next year and a half, we made between 40 and 50 small tweaks and improvements to the page. And today, the page looks very much better. It looks like this, in fact. I think today, kind of using this as a starting point, I'd like to talk about kind of what the top improvements we made that resulted in this page being more helpful, and then kind of segue into a kind of a conversation discussion around the feedback we've gotten and how we've applied that to this page, but also the broader Nexus Repo experience. So what improvements did we make? As I said, we spent about a year and a half making improvements to that page, slowly, iteratively over time. So I'm just going to talk about the top 4, but keep in mind that there were kind of a lot of experiments that went into making the experience what it is today. So the first improvement I'd like to talk about is update notifications. So this is pretty simple, but it actually was a remarkably a good improvement. So the problem that we were trying to solve is that essentially software is best when it's kept up to date. And one thing that we wanted to do was to let you know within the product when a new update came available. And so this little banner here shows you a few things. It shows you what the new version is, gives you some highlights of that new version, and kind of helps you be informed as to whether or not upgrading makes sense for you. And then it also tells you how old your current version of Nexus Repo is, because that's also some information that might incentivize you to upgrade or to choose not to upgrade. And if you want, you can dig into the release notes and then actually click through to our download site where you can download the binaries. And we've seen a lot of people using this new feature and essentially keeping their software up to date simply by being aware that new releases are available. So that's a pretty awesome way that we've helped use this space to make the whole experience a little bit more helpful. The second improvement I wanted to talk about is dismissible content, which sounds a little bit obscure, but it's really quite simple. So the problem that we were trying to solve is there was lots of helpful things we knew we could add to this page, but not all of those improvements make sense in perpetuity. So there are some things, and updates are a great example, where you might see that there's an update available, And once you've made a decision for yourself as to whether or not you plan to take action, if you've decided not to upgrade, you probably don't want that banner hanging around. So the dismiss functionality just puts a little box X on the page that lets you choose to hide various bits of content on the page. And the side benefit of this is that it helps bring kind of to the fore the other content on the page that you do find valuable, so it doesn't get buried, in a sea of irrelevancy. So that's the second improvement that we've made to the outreach page. The third improvement is easy access to documentation. But again, this is fairly straightforward and seemed obvious in retrospect, but it's something that we hadn't actually put in place for quite some time. So you might remember in that original welcome page that I showed you, there was that little resources section with a link to docs and the Nexus feedback email and things like that. But it was pretty generic, and it wasn't really doing a great job of surfacing things that someone who's on the welcome page, especially a new user, might find helpful when getting in. So we created this Get Started section here on the left. And it's actually mildly intelligent. It can actually tell when you're not on the latest. And if you're not, then it will say, maybe you'd like some docs related to installing or related to upgrading. And then once you do upgrade to the latest version, then those links go away. So they don't clutter your space when they're probably not all that helpful. And looking further down the Get Started section, you can see a link for configuration. And that link takes you to a page in the docs with kind of a walkthrough of our UI and helps explain what the different sections do and how to configure them properly. And so that's been a very popular link as well. And then going further down that section, you can see the repository formats listed there below. And this has been also pretty wildly popular, and it serves a couple of purposes. The first purpose is that it kind of gives you an overview of all the formats that we support in our ecosystem. For a long time, Nexus Repo was kind of Maven-centric, and with Nexus Repo 3, we're trying to move more to a polyglot view of the universe. And so this kind of helps highlight the fact that a lot of work has been done in other ecosystems to make them first-class citizens of Nexus Repo. So on the left, you can see a list of formats that come pre-installed with Nexus Repo. And whenever you upgrade, you're going to get the latest, the full list of that column. And on the right, you can see a list of formats that are created and supported by our community. And that list is growing rapidly, but the purpose of keeping it here is so that you can easily link off to the Sonatype exchange and get those documentation and plugins for use in your Nexus repo. And then below, we have a basic link to the doc site as existed before, in case that something you need isn't on this page and you just want to search for it really quickly. So the last improvement I wanted to talk about is surveys and polls. And this will kind of segue into Shade's part of the presentation. So you'll notice on the welcome page that we have this big box on the lower right. And this is where surveys and polls appear on a regular basis. And the problem that we were trying to solve here is we have a roadmap and we have things we know need to get done. But before we go off and build them, we want to make sure we're getting feedback from the community so that we're building them in the right way. So what this space allows us to do is get immediate feedback to let you know when we have something coming down the pike, and then to get your thoughts and comments, which directly inform what that feature turns out to be. So to talk a little bit about kind of how we consume the feedback that we get through this and other channels, and then also how the research program at Sonatype works, generally speaking, turn it over to Shade, and Shade can talk through kind of some of that side of what we do.
Thanks, Daniel. So to tell you a bit more about the channels that we've created to connect Nexus repository users and the product teams, I can tell you a bit about our UX research program. So in our UX research program, we have 4 main pillars that act as channels for engaging with our users. The first one there on the left is about how we want to learn more about customers and their problems to ensure that we're staying up to date in understanding customer needs and behaviors. And this is something that happens on an ongoing basis through our polls, through our surveys, and customer interviews. And the second pillar is concept testing. So that's testing of new feature ideas. So whenever we have new ideas that we think will provide value to our customers, we schedule sessions to talk to customers and talk to our users to make sure we're understanding what they think will provide value to them and to be able to prioritize their needs. The third section is product testing. So that's more feature testing, looking at, is this feature easy to use? Are customers satisfied with it? Is it useful? So that's classic usability testing. We also do customer interviews. And then the final pillar is measurement. So that's summative testing of existing products to determine how customers are using features today. So those are the features that are already released. And we just continuously check in with users in interviews and usability testing to ensure we're meeting any developing needs as we move forward with product development. So then just to ensure that we're continuously reaching out to users to get their feedback at every stage of the design and development process, we provide multiple opportunities for engagement. So on the welcome page, you'll see us post those polls, also longer surveys. We'll post requests for users to join product team calls and usability tests as well. And on the next slide, we can take a look more specifically at polls and surveys. So most of the time, you'll find that we have a poll posted on Nexus Repository Manager welcome page. The questions that we choose are either related to a specific feature or they're a general call for feedback regarding improvements. And polls are typically really short, 1 to 2 questions, because our goal is to provide a channel for users to give input in just taking a few seconds of their time. But once a feature is on the roadmap and we have a timeline for design and development, we move into capturing more detailed user feedback. So we'll post longer surveys on the welcome page. We'll post requests for users to talk to us in usability tests and concept tests, like I noted. And for surveys and calls, we're asking for a more significant investment in users' time. So we often provide a gift card gratuity as a thank you for joining the session as well. But as an example for how polls and surveys and user testing connect together and through the welcome page, our most recent feature poll was on retention policies and cleanup. So the Nexus Repository Manager team wants to make it easier to remove unnecessary components so that users can reclaim storage space. So we asked our users to tell us more about their needs for retention policies to help inform our upcoming work. So you might have seen we posted a poll asking users if automatically removing components is a concern for them and to describe the state of their current and expected storage capacity. And after we collected that feedback, we also posted a follow-up longer survey asking users what content removal approaches are valuable to them and how easy or difficult it is to standardize retention and removal policies. And so from that survey, then we also just put out a call asking if users would want to talk to us in more detail about their needs. And we're currently in that process of talking to people who signed up in 30-minute product team calls where users can talk directly to our product owners and product team to talk more about their needs and to also learn about our future ideas for retention policies and cleanup. On the next slide, in addition to featuring to feature-related polls, we also ask questions occasionally just about general improvements, customer satisfaction. We post an NPS, a Net Promoter Score, to get feedback. So on the left here, it shows our Net Promoter Score process. So what we do is we conduct a content analysis of the open-ended feedback that we get from the NPS, and we track the comments based on whether they're positive or negative and whether they come from promoters, passives, or detractors. So to calculate the net promoter score, we ask how likely are you to recommend us to a friend or colleague? And promoters are those who rate the question a 9 or 10. Passives give it a rating of 7 or 8, and detractors a rating of 0 to 6. So the unique approach we take in UX is then to bucket those open-ended comments attached to the score by feature area. So we ask also, why did you give us this score? And then we look at whether the comment was positive or negative, like I said, whether it came from a promoter, passive, or detractor. And then we track if the comments in a certain feature area are trending more negative or more positive, and you can see that on the right. So each bar represents a feature area, and at the top you could see that's Q3 from 2017 and then Q4 from 2017 as an example. So we take those comments every quarter to see if we're improving. So for instance, last year we had a lot of comments asking for UI upload in Nexus Repository Manager 3. Which created a negative trend in comments. And then when we released upload in the UI, those comments began trending in a positive direction. And so on the next slide, just to show you the process of how we listen to customers throughout the development process, I brought 2 examples. On the left, you can see UI upload. So for UI upload, we started tracking feedback in the NPS. So we weren't prompting people and asking them about UI upload, but it's just something that emerged in the content analysis. So from that, we created a specific poll asking for feedback directly on UI upload. And so then after that, we took the trends from that feedback and brought it to the product team. And we looked at some of the reasons why people were requesting UI upload, some of the implementation details they were requesting. So people talked a lot about the convenience of being able to upload third-party components to a hosted repository directly from the UI, that they were missing that in 3.x. They talked about the efficiency compared to using the command line and requested support for additional formats beyond Maven, so raw, NPM, PyPy, NuGet, Ruby gems. So from there, we followed up with users and conducted interviews and then usability tests once we had mock-ups and designs for the new UI upload experience. And we had several rounds of iterations there, checking in with our users. And for UI upload, we're currently still collecting feedback in usability tests of the UI today to hone future improvements. So after it's released, we continue to listen, and we'll continue to track any comments that pop up in our improvement polls or our NPS as well. And then on the right, you can see tree browsing. So the tree browsing research started with a targeted poll asking users for feedback on their current use of browse and search. We also asked for any general improvements they would like to see made, and then we dove in with interviews on individual users' specific needs. So the feedback in the original poll and then survey, people talked a lot about the efficiency of tree browsing, how it improved their effectiveness, and the needs they'd have for ease of navigation. So we conducted interviews, and like with UI upload, a couple of rounds of usability testing with mock-ups and interactive prototypes. And then afterwards, we followed up with a poll targeted to the tree browsing experience, asking for users' input on their continued experience, if there's anything else they would like to see develop or improved upon. And we've taken action on some of that feedback. We're responding to bug reports and continuing to work on the tree browse representation for different formats like Docker. So if you'd like to participate in a UX session, you can also contact us directly. So you can sign up to join customer calls. Today, we're looking for people to talk about search, retention policies and cleanup, and content replication, and then you can always just look for our current poll on the welcome page. But I'll drop a direct UX sign-up form in the general Slack channel, and you can sign up to be contacted for sessions on specific topics or anything in general. But I'll hand the mic back over to Daniel here for some final thoughts on making Nexus Repository Manager more helpful.
Thanks, Shade. So, like Shade mentioned, really for us, trying to be more of a culture of experimentation, it's not just about getting feedback to actually make the improvements themselves, but it's about monitoring, after improvement had been released, to see if it actually had the intended effect, and then to iterate as needed until you get it right. So there are a few reasons why we think that the improvements that we've been making to the welcome page, but also to other parts of Nexus Repo are working. The first reason is that people like you have told us so, and we hear from Twitter, we hear through Jira, we hear via the polls and the surveys, and generally what we hear is that the improvements that we make are what people need to get their jobs done, and so that feels really good. But secondly, and Shade touched on this as well, we look at our NPS score over time, and every quarter when we send out that survey, we kind of see how we're doing, and the score is trending up and to the right. So it indicates that, again, that the improvements that we're making to Nexus Repo are resulting in a more helpful experience. And finally, specifically to the welcome page, but since we started making improvements to that page a year and a half ago, we've seen 700% more engagement, which is huge. And again, I think that validates that the improvements and tweaks that we've made haven't just been done blindly, but have actually resulted in a page that people find valuable and want to use. So again, feel free to drop your questions into the Slack channel, and we'll be happy to answer them here if there are any questions right now, or we can answer them afterwards and follow up. But basically, if there are any improvements we've made, we'd love to hear what you think about them. So feel free to drop that into the channel. And also, if you have any questions about the way we do research at Sonatype, I'm sure Shade would love to field some of those questions as well. And feel free to ask questions about anything that we covered in this presentation, and we'll be happy to take that. Is there anything in the Slack channel, Shade?
Yeah, I haven't been tracking it, so I can't answer that for you at the moment, but I'm sure there have been questions or comments in the Slack channel all day as I look over to my other computer where it is. So Daniel and Shade, so the one thing, I think it's great that you guys did this session because one, it brings attention to a screen that a lot of people might say, I just need to get my work done, and I don't want the advertising or the whatever the company is saying, but really putting a face to a project and an initiative that we have at Sonatype to say we do care. We actually do want you to click on those links and take those surveys or participate in these groups. So I think that's an important part of how we improve our products and what gets on the roadmap for improvement, and that it really is user driven through these initiatives that you and your team are doing. When it goes beyond Nexus Repository that you focused on for this session, can people take the same initiatives for Nexus Lifecycle or Nexus Firewall in terms of feedback to the user experience team?
Yes, please do.
So excellent. So if there's any folks out there listening in that are using our other products in addition to Nexus Repository that have feedback on user experience, and you want to get involved with feedback on those products and the user experience there, definitely ping Daniel and Shade in the Slack channel.